Chapter 3. This is another lengthy chapter, guys, but it's really interesting. Really good. This is where things really heat up. Where the hell is my freaking warlord? Miss jerked upright, walking from the first real sleep she'd enjoyed since she'd been taken by the horde 4 nights ago. She was alone in his bed, her clothes washed and folded at the foot. She smiled to realize he'd drawn a blanket over her. She needed to keep up with Roth, at least until her sisters broke her out of this pokey. She swore again that this was the last time she would be bait, and this time she meant it. Rumor was rife in the lore, but tales of Avu the Cruel making dark alliances proved worrisome enough for them to re-encounter or undertake Operation Mist Get Snapped. Yet she'd learned little about Ivu for her troubles, the acting, the getting too close, and letting herself get caught, etc. Only that he was definitely planning something major. She chuckled. That is, until General Roth punked his ass out of the castle. No, she hadn't learned much about Ivu, but this Christoph and General stuff would make good dish. What if this king really wanted to kill the minstrel and stop vampires from terrorizing everyone else? Was it possible that not all vampires had a predisposition towards sociopathic evil? What if the Valkyrie didn't have to war with these forebearers? However, it was doubtful. Her sisters wouldn't discriminate between the two vampire factions. Kill first, then say, "Gosh, you were actually good. My dog." Vampires as a species were just simply too powerful to go unchecked. The minstrel and his vampire horde had been brutal to all the lore, but especially the Valkyrie. 50 years ago, Fury, their queen, the strongest and the most fiercest of them all, had tried to assassinate him. She had never returned. Tales about that had chained Fury to the bottom of the sea, to drown her again and again and again, only to have her dogged immortality surge her to life and then torment her once more. When the covens finally free her and found her, Fury would be like none other on earth, awash with rage. She wouldn't check for vampire affiliations before she slaughtered, and would expect her covens to follow in her example. So, until Miss Coven decided to put their plan in action with this new power, she'd go about business as usual, which meant she needed to find Roth before he'd come. Miss had been powerless here. She couldn't handle weapons as well as most of the Coven, though swords and bows were not her strengths. She preferred her weapon to be men, and now she had one, a big, scarred one with gorgeous eyes, and with skin that she wanted to lick until her tongue got tired in her clutches. Manipulating men, playing with them, making them believe she lived for them alone in order to have them do her bidding was her MO. Fury had once asked her, "Why would you send a man to do a woman's job?" Confused, Miss answered, "Because I can?" The problem with Oblak's vampires was that they had no appreciation for her whatsoever. At least Roth liked to look at her. For them, the blood suspended all, and she would never withhold it nor capitalize on it. Though the eyes of every creature in the lore turned a certain species-related color with intense emotion, theirs was prematurely wholly red, from sucking the life from their victims to the very marrow. not from merely drinking as these forebears had feared. One kill put them in a downward spiral, because with each kill came the bloodlust riding them to do it again and again. Then the subsequent accumulation of their victims' memories over the years drove them mad. Yet for the last 4 nights, Ivo and his men had never drunk from her. Vacillating, examining her as she had yawned with boredom, she snapped at Ivo once. "Get dental with me or don't, but make a damn decision already." His eyes had slitted with menace, his red gaze a contrast of his pale face and shaven head. But in the end, he had avoided taking her blood, thinking her madness may be catching. Worked for her. In fact, she'd never been bitten a day in her life. She wondered what it would be like to have Roth take her neck last night when his pupils had flickered black with want. She was an awful person, and she knew it. Wrecked with perversion to even entertain these thoughts. Probably the only Valkyrie on earth who would ever fantasize about a vampire. She frowned. No, it had to be at least one other. Miss tapped her chin, wondering if she could tell the forebears that that they forewent for really no reason. Nah. Maybe if the scrumptious general continued to be nice to her, she'd hint only a little. She had heard of him back in the day. Of course, they had a correspondent in the field following that war, and she reported back to Roth. She reported back that Roth had been big and brave and deliciously ruthless to his enemies, though the Overlord had lost in the end, almost by a much larger force. He'd brought his people at least 1 decade of protection. Miss and her sisters had sat by the hearth, sighing over the tales of his deeds as though ogling an issue of Tiger Beat, whatever Tiger Beat is. Miss remembered that she had felt loss at the news of his defeat because she'd known it meant the death of a great man. But he'd made a comeback, and in person he hadn't disappointed. Except for the fact that he was now a mortal enemy. Or rather, an immortal mortal enemy. Oh, and the leech. She tried the door of his room, just in case to see if he decided to trust her. But it was locked, though not mystically reinforced like her cell was. She could easily have broken it down, but she didn't have to be in the dungeon until dawn. So she took her time, dressing and piling up her hair the way she thought he'd like, and still had time to root through all his things, though she kept her eyes from the shiny jeweled cross, lest she get sticky-fingered with it. Digging through his clothes, she realized she liked how he dressed. His style modern, but still aristocratic somehow, and she loved his scent and his careless but sexy hair. She'd rolled in the bed with one of his big cabled knitted sweaters, her face buried in it, ceasing to care if he returned and found her like that. But he never showed, and instead 2 guards had arrived to escort her back down, as per his orders. They wouldn't meet her eyes. Well, shite. They knew something she didn't. Roth hadn't kept her as she'd hoped. She was in trouble, and she suspected they knew why. "If you do happen to have information, I can get it from you," he said. When they closed the cell door behind her and she realized she was the only one in the dungeon, her fears were confirmed. The low beings here, those who made up the Saturday night creature feature underbelly of the lore had been taken away, no doubt to be tortured, or they had already been tortured and killed. She was the only girl left on the dance floor, but not for long. She knew because none of the others would have talked. Of course, she'd threatened to peel them and their families for revealing any information, and that there was that reason. And may you never feel a Valkyrie's breath on your back was a drinking toast among the lore. The vampires might come and take one's village, but the Valkyrie would creep in, hiding under a bed to take one's head from a pillow. Their word was law. Which left her. She looked up when she heard boots clicking over the stone. Listen carefully, Mist, Roth said, as a guard opened her cell before leaving them. I'm going to ask you a few questions about your kind, and about the different factions in the lore. You must answer them, and I've been ordered to get the information from you by the force. Torture? Ordered? Can't you disobey Christoph? For me? Mist, you know I'd be dead if not for him. My brothers, and my friends as well. My life has not been my own since that night. He was actually serious about this. But then, Miss hadn't been kidding either. When she'd said that torture really pissed her off, she'd been giving Roth preferential treatment because he was like a celebrity of martial circles. But now he'd taken a plunge into vampirism, and she needed to remember that. She'd push a cudgel to the end about that. Bring it, Leech. Still bubbly friendly, she said. Roth? You could help me escape. I swore my fealty, and I see my order through. Answer, and you'll face the consequences. Answer, or you'll face the consequences, he said. I'll begin with the most basic. What are you? A pussycat doll? She asked, immediately doing a slow head shake at his look. Judge, jury, and executioner, he scrawled. Her eyes lit up. Transient? What? Really? No. Babe in Toyland? Damn it, Mist. Just answer the questions. Then you can go back up to my room. He lowered his voice and curled his fingers under her chin. We can sleep together again as we did today. But you don't understand that torture would be easier for me than to go back to the lore as an informant. Don't you get it? She'd no longer be an A-lister, an avoid at all costs enemy. She'd lose her street status as a creature with whom one did not fuck. My brother has tried to get information from the others. But they didn't talk either, huh? She sounded smug. He seemed to shake himself, hardening his resolve. You're leaving me little choice, Mist. Very little choice. Well, she was about to experience firsthand the Overlord's ruthlessness she'd admired, because apparently he decided she was an enemy just when she thought they were getting kinda cozy. Way to hurt my feelings, Ruff. She sniffled. No, I'll really have to kill you. With his thoughts constantly on her throughout the night, he stalled for hours as much as he could, waiting till nearly dawn, ensuring his interrogation would be at least brief. "So you're really gonna do this?" she asked as she turned for him, moving into the back corner. Her shoulders were shaking as he suspected she was laughing. When he crossed to her, taking her arm and turning her, he was shocked to find genuine tears streaming down her heartbreakingly beautiful face. "Roth, I thought we had an arrangement." She cast him a brow-drawn look of betrayal. She wasn't feigning this. In her wild, mixed-up mind, she had thought they were probably truly friends. The cell wobbled, and he braced himself, frowning that she seemed not to notice. Just aftershocks from last night, he thought. He didn't want her to hurt, but her eyes were ablaze with it, raw, true, and bare. He was actually seeing her, mixed with her false swagger and play peeled back. This was a facet of her, but it was finally missed, and suddenly he found it unbearable as each tear fell. He flinched when one drop hit her cheek, flinched as though it had been a hit. After shaking all around him, she turned from him, appeared to wipe her face. When she turned back, she was blatantly sexual, as though she donned the mask once more. "Mist, I don't want to hurt you, but you must answer my questions. This isn't a game." She gave him a look of utter disbelief. "Then what exactly is this? You want to know about the lore? Learn this lesson well, Roth. We are all pawns." The castle shook around him, and while he glanced around wildly, she remained undaunted. No, it was not outside shaking. The sound booming in his ears like an earthquake was coming from within him. "What are you?" he demanded again. Her face never lost its expression of vague distance, even when her hand pressed gently against his chest, to feel his heart stutter, then thunder to life, because he'd finally seen her and recognized her for what she was. "Apparently, I'm your bride." "I was wondering if I could get to turn from you," Miss purred at him, as he struggled to hide his shock. She found him to be cool, disciplined man even. But she'd heard that a new heartbeat was deafening for those unblooded vampires, the sudden rush of sexual desire overwhelming, their breaths unpracticed and rough at first. With soft touch, she eased him against the wall. His eyes were half-lidded as she rubbed up and down his chest. "How does the air in your lungs feel?" she asked. He inhaled deeply. "Cold. Pressure. But it feels good." He looked at her with such gratitude for blooding him. They always did. "How does your blood feel? Heating? Moving?" "Stronger. It's searing." She palmed his erection through his pants, and his entire body jerked as he threw back his head to yell out. She was almost in shock. She'd known Roth was very well endowed, but hard, he was overly so. Like perhaps a demon or likely endowed. He held her hand in place over his shaft, making her fingers curve around it, and he slowly thrust against her palm. Her body softened when he imagined the onslaught of need clawing at him. In sensual whisper, she asked, "And how does it feel when it hardens and distends?" "Good," he grated with a shudder. "So damn good." "It's been 3 centuries." "Well, you're due, I suppose." She unzipped his pants, just enough to wiggle her thumb inside and rub the broad tip of his penis, making it grow slick. His eyes rolled back in his head. "I can only imagine how heavy and tight this feels." Throbbing with pleasure, close to exploding. "Why are you doing this to me?" She thought to herself, "Because I can." Soon, he would have no more thought than an animal. His eyes were growing black. She stroked his length through his pants, revealed she would never have to take his relieved she would never have to take his uncomfortable size within her body. 5, 4, 3, 2. Roth attacked, groaning, and he was surprisingly strong as he pinned her arms over her head. He kissed her, deeply, possessively, seeming to brand her with his kiss. He left her panting when he bent down to lick her nipples, sucking at them through her blouse. His other hand cupped her sex. With a growl, he yanked himself from her and took her elbow. "Come with me." Damn it, Dawn neared. Where were they? She had to keep in here. "No, Roth," she said. "Won't claim my bride in a dungeon." "But I can't wait," she cried. "Tell the guards to leave." "No." "Roth!" She gripped his shaft hard, while whispering in his ear, "My body weeps for this thrusting inside me." He bellowed out an order, then tore open her blouse and her bra, suckling and tucking her nipples roughly. Involuntarily, her back arched, pressing her breast into his gorgeous lips. When she had begun unduling her hip for him, she had no clue. "I've waited for you," he bit out. "So long, I've waited." One hand pinned her wrist above her. The other shot up her skirt and ripped her panties completely. His fingers roved, hot and slow, over her, teasing. He knew exactly how to set her on fire, using the moisture of her own body to slide his thumbs around her clitoris in slow, slick, mind-numbing circles. "So wet," he rasped against her breast. "As soon as I saw you, Mist, I wanted it to be you." His lips took her hardening nipple, sucking on it until it throbbed. He turned to the other one, giving it the same attention. Miss made a decision then. There was simply no way she was going to miss this. She moaned in truth, unable to control herself as lightning fired outside in conjunction with her emotion. When she plunged her finger inside her, withdrew, then thrust too deep within her, she wanted to come around them. He slid them into her unhurriedly, but just with enough force that she was rocked to her toes each time. She arched her back once more, wanting to offer up her breast to him. She spread her legs, taking this fierce touch. "Don't stop," she panted, so close, aching to reach for his shaft. But he captured her hands above her. "Never." His thrust hardened until she didn't know if her toes would ever touch the ground. Then he spread his fingers inside her as if preparing her for his size. Her head fell back, and she moaned at the overwhelming feeling of fullness. She raised her leg to lay it over his knees, he'd placed against the wall, as though just on purpose. Spread to him, she ground her hips wildly. At her ear, he mumbled the words, "Come for me, Milia." Yes, wrath," she moaned again, about to succumb to his stroking. She gave a strangled cry and climaxed with a fury, wet pulsing, that staggered her and made him groan as if he had as well. "I can feel you come," he grated, while she clutched him, rolling her hips against his masterful touch until she was too sensitive to continue. But he didn't stop there, until she was mindlessly moaning his name in his capturing arms. When she was spent, she sagged against him until weak on dueling for him. Her nipples went wet and aching for his tongue. He cupped the back of her neck and yanked her up to face him, gazing down at her with lust, but his words were more. "I will be good to you, Mist. I promise. I'll protect you. You are mine." He was saying these things because he was about to shove himself inside her with his huge shaft, to claim her, of course, a true vampire's bride. He took her leg and clutched it to his hip, about to free himself. Her half-lidded eyes had just widened with true alarm that she heard the merest whisper at the gateway of the dungeon. Before he could react, Miss flung herself away. Why would she do that? His hand shot out to pull her back to him, but she sunk from him. Why wasn't he inside her now? He'd made sure she was wet, ready to receive him. He heard movement and jerked his head forward, fangs sharpening in fury. "Well, look at the lovebirds." A creature similar to Mist, standing at the entry of the cell, a bow at the ready. A second one with bright glowing skin joined her, happily chewing a gum and flipping a dagger in the air. "Don't make me look. I think I'm going to be sick." "Mist, coverting with a vampire is a new low, even for you." "What's this?" Wrath demanded, stalking towards them. The archer knocked a bow with supernatural speed and let it sing without hesitation. He lunged to dodge it, but she'd anticipated his move, and the arrow pinned him to the wall. A second took his other shoulder, drilling its tip half a foot into the stone. He cast her a killing look, then lunged forward to simply let the arrows tear through him, but the shafts were ringed with shank nails. When he realized he wouldn't be moving, he bellowed with rage. He saw Miss pulling her clothes together, turning for the door. "Don't you walk away from me!" "So sorry to interrupt your plans for tonight." She cast him a hurt look. You almost made me forget what you really came down here to do. To torture me. You want to learn? Know that we hate torture. It starts to add up over the years. That was before I knew you were my bride. Her face went cold in an instant. Before you knew you could finally screw me? Know that your body's in working order? I don't feel the same, vampire. You're my bride. Mine. You belong to me. She flew back at him, enraged. The bright one tossed her a dagger, and Miss caught it behind her without even looking. Again, his mind damned to know what she was. She pressed the blade at his jugular. Her pupils were silver, and lightning bolted the castle. If I belonged to every man who wanted me to every single vampire I'd blooded, there'd be nothing left of me. Nothing but scars. You've not blooded others, he simply said. They would be here protecting you, fighting for you. Not, she leaned closer, tilting her head like an animal. If I've killed them all. Then she grabbed the back of his head and pulled him to her, pressing her lips against his. She kissed him hard. Yet, he soon tasted her blood. Just as he groaned, she drew back, with an inscrutable expression on her face. Unimaginably warm and rich, her blood was as exquisite as everything else about her, and he shredded in ecstasy at the luscious taste. You know I don't want nothing else now, he rasped. In response, she snapped her teeth at him. To the others, she commanded, "Leave him," then exited the cell. The archer and the bright one exchanged a confused glance. And by leave him, you clearly mean to leave him beheaded, disemboweled, and chocked with quills like a pincushion, right? You heard him. I'm his bride, she said. Oh, the bright one answered, blowing a bubble. You mean he hasn't, released? The first time since his blooding? Then with a quick glance at his crotch, she said, and he stays like that without you, right? She chuckled. I'm cool with the plan. The archer wasn't convinced. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed condemning the vampires to an unduly, endless sexual torture as much as the next fabulously talented huntress. Then Roth heard a guard charging in. She leisurely just shot an arrow in that direction, tilting her head at the result, then sighed to mist. But Vampire Bride just sounds so B-movie. Come on, girl. He just dragged you down to B-moviedom. B-moviedom. The bright one made her voice overly dramatic, saying, For that alone, Mist, he must die. Seriously, Mist, your husband has irrevocably damaged your street cred. Unless you kill him, others will never respect you again. They were all mad, Roth had been thinking to himself. And still, he was hard, aching for her body, for the blood she'd given him just to torture him. You evil teasing bitch, Kill me now! For just the merest second, he'd imagined he saw compassion in her eyes. But when she shrugged, his hazy mind finally grasped that she was going to leave him here with nothing but a blood knotted for the lust for her, and the taste of blood he would go on his knees for. You're the most malicious bitch I've ever known. Flattery? She chirped. Across the corridor, she easily leapt to the window, 40 feet above, opening the shutters to draw the unfortified bars from the space, as though she might have plucked back a curtain. She held a hand down for the others. I will find you, he bit out. I will find you and make you pay for this 1,000 times over. The bright one leapt up and caught Miss Forefinger with her own. Wow, sounds like he's setting up a hot date, she said, as she dangled. Miss purred, her gaze flickering down on him. Baby, just casual. Wow. Chapter 4 already? Well, exciting, wasn't it? So, as you can see, the Valkyries are a teasing set of females. You know, when I think of Valkyries, I almost think of Wonder Woman, really. But yeah, we'll just have to see what happens in Chapter 4 when they set up their hot date. Until next time, guys. Love ya.